Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Independent Presents, our year-round screening and Q&A series. I'm Brian Sheen with Film Independent. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk all things Val. First off, I'd like to thank some of our supporters, our lead sponsor, the HFPA, and our official partner, Vision Media. Today, we have a very special guest moderator. You know him from Turner Classic Movies, from the Today Show, and from IMDb TV. We have Dave Karger, and without further ado, I will let Dave take it away from here.
It's my absolute pleasure to be here to talk about this movie that I love so much.
I don't do this with every interview I go on. Take you inside my home. I don't, but I'm going to.
My name is Val Kilmer. I'm an actor. I've lived a magical life, and I've captured quite a bit of it.
Push the button.
I was the first guy I knew to own a video camera.
Here we are, filming ourselves.
Is that a video camera? Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool, Val.
I have thousands of hours of videotapes and film reels that I've shot throughout my life and career.
Shut the video camera off.
I will keep it on until we're rehearsing.
Oh, damn.
And I'm very happy to be joined by the two people who edited the movie, directed the movie, and also two of the people who produced the movie, Ting Pu and Leo Scott. So Ting and Leo, hello to you both. Great to see you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Leo, I know you've told this story many times, but I love the story of how this movie became a reality for you because it exemplifies how a gesture that might seem very small and minor at the time can turn into something so meaningful. So for people who don't know, can you explain how you got to know Val Kilmer, I guess a decade or so ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because I feel like I have told the story a few times in the last couple of months because people are curious, and it is interesting, and it feels really it feels like an important random thing that had a big consequence and results. Basically, I was working with a filmmaker, Harmony Korine, about 10 years ago on a half-hour comedy where Val was playing himself as a motivational speaker in some absurd world. And it was such a funny, bonkers movie. He was quite incredible what he did with that character. It was so funny, and I even got to watch some of his process because he was sending Harmony little videos along the way, and short little things he shoot on his phone. Anyway, I was editing this thing. I hadn't met Val, and after a few weeks, I just really, really wanted to tell him how good he was, because I never got to tell him in person, and it was such a pleasure. Like to this day, probably still the best, most electric performance I've ever got to work with. And Harmony insisted I tell him. I sort of remember crafting an email on a Saturday morning. I spent probably an hour deliberating on every single word, put this thing together, press send, and he wrote back to me within less than half a minute or something. And he wrote back a witty response. And then it led from a short sort of email exchange to then me helping him on his Mark Twain project, where he was starting to workshop this thing and starting to share it with audiences, small audiences for the first time, because he was the director, writer, producer, and obviously star. Like he was shooting these small performances, and then he would send me the footage in London at the time where I was living, and I would cut these plays together and then send them back to him, or sometimes cut little trailers that he would then share with people as well. And as I was kind of getting more and more involved in that Mark Twain project, and then I was also moving over to America already at that time, and then I started helping him, with filming some of this sort of behind the scenes, but they felt like important beats in this story as he was taking this character to he was sharing this character on stage the first time, and it was a fascinating process, and I got to sort of experience that with him, and I just thought it was important to document it. So I was filming some of that, and then around that time, or maybe a little bit later, when he had to abandon the tour of the play, when he lost his voice. And that's when I helped him digitize this mountain of tapes that he had been accumulating over his life. It kind of, he was worried about them deteriorating and decaying, and he asked me to help him sort of turn them from analog format into digital. And then, you know, we could look at maybe doing something with that. We were making a film around the Twain character at that time, but then we had to abandon that project when he was dealing with some health issues. And so yeah, it was started with an email.
Wow. And Ting, what's the history with you and Leo, and what was your reaction when he first got in touch with you and said, can you come work on this with me?
Yeah, I mean, Leo and I had worked together and collaborated as editors a lot. And I mean, I had seen some of the material while it was going in at Leo's house years before. And I just never, I mean, I worked on lots of documentaries and with a lot of personal archival before, but I'd never seen anything like what was going in, and not just the amount of stuff that he had accumulated over his life, but the incredibly special nature of it in terms of, you know, just being in these intimate situations behind the scenes of all these iconic films. And then, and everything from that to him practicing his craft and getting into the, you know, like rehearsing over and over again different characters, and then just like the incredibly special and intimate things with him and his family. So, I mean, when I had seen that stuff, it just really, you don't forget about material like that. And then, and a couple years later, I asked what's going on with that project. And Leo was like, well, you know, we had to park it, but Val has recovered from cancer, and he might be, he's also writing an autobiography, and he might be in a place where he'd want to make something bigger about his entire life story and career. And we approached him with the prospect of making a film about his life, and he was luckily into it.
Instantly, or give me some time to think about it and I'll get back to you?
No, he was open to the idea instantly, and, you know, the relationship was there, and, you know, he's always interested in projects. But the nature of the film we wanted to tell, Ting and I were very like, you know, because we'd lived through this material and seen this material, like it felt like we were very determined to do a first-person subjective film, like with no talking heads. That was from the day one. And we did need, I felt that we needed to sort of, we wanted to prove what that could look like, what it could feel like. So we decided to make a 3 or 4 minute sizzle tape, which is just like a short version of the film. And it was really, you know, it was really potent, you know, because these moments from his life, and then with a voiceover that was actually his voice that we'd found in the archive that helped tell this story. And we did take that to him to show our vision for the storytelling. And he watched it, play it again, played it a few times actually. At first I was like, oh God, does he hate this? And then by the second or third time, and he's seeing images of his mom at the time who's still alive, and it was really memorable. He completely understood it, and then he was like behind us doing this, and we just sort of greenlit the project ourselves, and we just sort of started making it before we'd found our partners, and we were sort of shooting with him, we were shooting at the sequences with him, and then we were cutting them, and for quite a while it was just the three of us, you know, and then we eventually found our partners. And then obviously he had he had people around him and his team, Helmel and some other, you know, and his kids, and Jack came involved early on as well. But what I mean is we sort of started from this like, oh, let's make a film, and then we had this amazing material, and then it just grew.
Ting, I can only begin to imagine how overwhelming it must have felt to start logging, looking at thousands of hours of this footage. How many people did you bring on? Did you have some PAs or interns? And what was the process by which you had all of this material and footage actually logged and, marked, and did you have codes as far as what you thought could work, had to be in, maybe could work, and how did it all work just logistically?
Well, I mean, we organized we had to put order to all of it. So all the tapes were organized chronologically. As they were going in, I tried, luckily those old formats, there's date stamps burned in. So that was very lucky. In a lot of cases, it was easy to identify what year they were from. But yeah, it was an incredible amount of organization. My assistant, Zach Edwards, was incredible. He was there from start to finish. And then we would bring on other assistants as needed. Depending on, oh, we found the deck for this. Now we can digitize this whole box, or, as things ebbed and flowed. But yeah, I mean, it seems overwhelming, but it was also just like the most wonderful experience, just because once it's all in there, you just start going through, you don't know what you're about to see. And it was just like daily surprises and daily, discoveries and some of the most exciting material that I've ever gotten to work with.
I'm sure. Leo, was there anything off limits as far as what you could put in the final film? Was there anything that Val said or someone around him said no?
No, he was open to anything. The whole process involved a lot of trust, and there was a relationship there already, and then we built on that more and more, and he didn't make us feel ever like worried or self-conscious about showing him anything, whether that was creative or whether it was showing a difficult moment in his life or a really emotional moment in his life. And it was an emotional experience for him. But in terms of like not being allowed to share anything with him, or not at all. I mean, there were some things which, it's funny, we was with the Island Dr. Moreau sequence, for example, was a very tense shoot, notoriously so, and problematic shoot. And we cut together a long secret, like something maybe twice the length of what it is in the finished film. And probably, we were a little bit like, it's hard to watch. It was hard to watch it, or even now it's like, oh my God. And then when it was twice the length, we put it in front of him and we kind of gave him a little bit of a preamble about what to expect. And he watched it like poker faced, and then turned around to Ting and I and said, "What were you worried about? Is that it?" Because that was probably like one of the more sort of, that was quite, quite a sort of a difficult moment in his life, numerous reasons, and the shoot wasn't going well, and it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And we wanted to include all those moments, the highs and lows, and he wanted to as well. So,
I mean, I remember in 1996, I was a young writer at Entertainment Weekly magazine, and we were covering that movie because we were hearing the stories. And I remember a colleague of mine writing about it. And I also do remember, just in general, a lot of the blame, if you will, for the difficulty of the shoot fell on Val's shoulders. And it was fascinating to see the evidence, I guess, if you want to call it that, in the form of these videos. Where do you two kind of now fall, having seen everything that he shot with his camcorder? Where do you fall as far as how deserved the difficult actor reputation that hangs over his head is?
Well, I think I think that word is just really reductive, and it's hopefully what we tried to do, because we knew that reputation is a big part of his mythology as an actor. But what we tried to do was show the context of him, of a complete human being, and where his mindset and emotions might have been in these situations. And we didn't really want to editorialize on one way or another, except to just let you experience these moments through his lens that he captured, and then, you know, decide for yourself what that situation was about. And I think offering more context of who he is and what drives him as an artist and what drives him very passionately as an actor helps give context around that type of thing.
Absolutely, it does. I also want to ask you too about the new footage that was shot for the film. And Leo, you talked about how, you know, the original plan was to make a film more about the Mark Twain project. But I'm just fascinated by all of the original stuff that you shot. How did the two of you go about realizing where you needed new footage and how it would interact with the archival stuff, and what were the challenges of getting all of that done?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we set out early on to make the headquarters of the project, the edit room, you know, and we had this assistant room with tons of different machines and cables, but then in terms of the edit, we mapped out on boards the chronology of his life and the geography of his life, and we tried to find a way of intersecting between the spaces and the people and important moments of his life. So, but then also in terms of filming moments, we tried to make them fit within what was actually happening within his life. So like if he was in New York to do a film, we then would go with him and then go and visit Juilliard, where he'd gone to study, and we'd arrange a trip there to Juilliard. And so it wasn't like we were going there just to go to Juilliard. It was that they were there for another reason, or for instance, when he was in Austin, Texas, the Tombstone, we thought that'd makes sense, obviously, to include that, but that story there. And London for Comic-Con, you know, that's where he went to film Top Secret, and where he first saw Joanne perform. And so we tried to find a way of to answer your question, yeah, we kind of look at the film and what we had, the sequences that existed, and trying to find a way of weaving in and trying to find its own sort of logic.
There are locations that are important in his life that and because he was doing a fair amount of traveling, when he would go to one of those locations, like New York, London, New Mexico, we would make sure to tag along because we knew those locations were important in his backstory. And the Tombstone, the stuff from the Tombstone screening, they were doing, it was a weekend, put a full weekend of Tombstone and Top Gun. So one day they did a Top Gun screening all around that, and one day they did a Tombstone. We knew, well, there's gonna be some intersection with one of these two movies at either event, and the Tombstone one ended up being so strong, that's the one that ended up in the film.
If you both don't mind what's going to sound like a very basic question, but I'm just so curious to hear the answer. What would you two say were your maybe 2 or 3 main goals with making this film? And what were Val's main goals with having this film made? Was it to flip the script on his reputation? Was it to inspire people? Was it to be a behind the scenes of his life? So what were his goals and what were your goals? And where, and maybe some mutual goals?
I mean, for me, I met Val 10 years ago, and when I met him, I kind of, it was a random way of meeting him, and then I got to become close with him and spend a lot of time, and he became a friend and a trusted person. And I just discovered by spending time with him and then watching him and his work and his craft as an artist, what an incredible creative force he was. So I was always interested in sharing, like, you know, his story and him as a man and his spirituality and his artistry and his humor, all those things. And I mean, I think he was always interested in art and inspiring people. It wasn't like anything to do with addressing anything anyone said about him, or it was more, he was probably ready to tell his life story when we went back to him. But you know, the first version we were working on was all about the Twain thing, which is the thing he was doing then, and he gets deeply involved in the thing he's working on at the time. And you can, when you look at all this material, and he's been doing this his whole life, he's such a hard-working man. You know, you'd see, like, from the sequences of Hamlet, I mean, he was practicing that role for years, dedicatedly so. I mean, I'm pleased that we've shared who he is, you know, and I think maybe only a film, you know, could really do it, like a film like this, because you know that he has an autobiography which is incredible, and he's got these amazing movies, but I think, you know, this film was helping to try and explain him a little bit.
Ting, obviously you all had the honor of premiering this film at the Cannes Film Festival, and there's been other events, you know, when it premiered this summer on Amazon, for instance, or in theaters with A24. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Val himself has been largely absent from a lot of kind of the big events surrounding the movie. I don't think he went to Cannes. I haven't seen him like on a carpet or something like that. I don't know if that's something he just wasn't ready to do, wasn't able to do because of health issues, but has he been able to kind of feel the love that this film has really engendered towards him?
I believe so. I believe he's had a lot of people, like friends and colleagues and just fans in general, reach out on one platform or another, or just personally, and tell him how much this film has meant to them and how much they've learned about him and were touched by it. We all have, and it's been incredible. So I think he is feeling the love.
Good. And then finally, Leo, can you tell me a little bit about just the experience of working with both of Val's children on this movie? I mean, obviously, as everyone knows, Jack does the voiceover, and I love how you introduced that with actually showing him in the booth, kind of pulling the curtain back on that, and it's really great. But also his daughter, Mercedes. What was the experience like, just having them on board?
I mean, they were both involved throughout, and they're obviously in the film because Val's been filming. I mean, they're used to having experienced that in their lives. So just because we have film cameras up now doesn't mean that's going to be in a film. This is going to be the moment where becomes a movie. But they were both really involved and really generous. And you know, Jack was helping us along the way, as I said, in with voiceover and you know, Val loves being around his children, and they are such a big part of his life. So it's important that they were in the film, and they're just a huge part of it. And they learned things about their dad and his life along the way. And it was pretty special to get to watch the film with the two of them finished in Cannes for the first time with a live audience. They'd obviously seen it along the way, but it was very memorable.
Yeah. Okay. Quick last thing. Favorite moment in the film for both of you, for each of you, whether it's an archival scene or something from the original stuff that you shot, something that you really love. Ting?
I think my favorite shot in the whole film is the one where Val's on the horse. I don't know why. I just love, there's just so much life in that shot. And it's just one shot, and he's shooting, riding a horse, first person. And you just see like the freedom of him on his ranch, and like the joy of that he had in that place. And he turns the camera on himself. And I just think it's one of the most beautiful moments.
How about you, Leo?
For me, it would probably be the Mark Twain on the beach, because that was our first day actually filming together. And it was a moment where we sort of, it was a makeup test. And I remember saying to Val, let's go out. Can we just go out? Let's leave this. Let's go. What happens if we go on the beach? He lived in Malibu, and the light was incredible. And we sort of bonded that day in that way. And we laughed a lot. And we had it was just, a lot of quite a bit from that shoot was in the film, actually, even though we shot, we toured with that play and everything, but that day was really special. And I think that shot of him walking the beach is something I always think of as being like, just takes me, I just connect with it from my own personal experience, but it's quite a surreal image.
Yes, yes, it's Mark Twain on the beach, not what you'd expect. I congratulate you both, Ting and Leo, on this beautiful film. It's just riveting and fascinating, and I'm just so glad that people are taking to it as much as they are. So I thank everybody at Film Independent for arranging this conversation, and I thank the two of you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.